Hello, everyone. Welcome to our intermission program. We're so happy that you joined us. This program is here to provide you with education to help you live your best life. We are so glad you're here with us, and just want to remind you to follow us on Instagram, because we're also having discussions over there and doing some lives. Today, I'm really pleased to introduce you to Taryn Longo. She's working on her master's degree in applied neuroscience at King's College in London. And she's a somatic experiencing practitioner. And somatic experiencing is a therapeutic model that helps people feel their feelings and get in their bodies and understand what's going on with them through the body rather than through the thinking brain. So welcome, Taryn. So glad you're here. You're muted there.
Hey. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So great to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Yeah, so we're talking about a project or a subject that both of us are really interested in. You're working on your master's in it, and but the nervous system. And the importance of the nervous system in how we are in the world and how we present in the world. And I have a little introduction that I thought I'd talk a little bit about the nervous system. And then we talked about doing a short tracking, something that each of us can do while we're sitting here is just to notice what's going on in our body. So I would just want to invite everyone just to notice what you're feeling. So I'm feeling a little activation because I'm on a webinar, and I can feel that, and I can feel there's a little bit of constriction, a little tightness up here in my throat. And I notice even with saying that, then there's a breath. So that's me tracking myself as we go into this discussion about the nervous system. There's a lot of good information that we're going to give here today, but we're also going to try to focus on just a few things.
Yeah.
We were talking about before the webinar, like this is really an ongoing practice, becoming aware of what's happening in your body, the nervous system, and that we can just add to it each day, like little bit by little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It has to be done in little bit by little bit, and we'll go over why, but
Okay.
But it definitely little bit by little bit will get you there faster.
Right. Right. So yeah, so the automatic nervous system is anything in the body that are like it controls, like without us thinking about it, right? Like heart rate, digestion, blood pressure, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's a central nervous system. Yeah.
Central nervous system. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's the, the part of our nervous system that is the fight, flight, freeze part. And that's the part that we're more talking about here, is the part that we can kind of, it does respond automatically and unconsciously, but it's the area that we can have more control over.
Right.
As opposed to like our breathing mechanisms. Yeah.
Great. And that's our sympathetic. Is that the sympathetic nervous system?
It's the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. So the peripheral is where it houses the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And those are the two that we'll be working with when we talk about somatic work. It's kind of funny because somatic actually just means like your body, but it's a body-based therapy. So that's the part of our nervous system that we're working with, the part that activates into a fight, flight, freeze variation. And that's what can affect our emotions, our perception, everything, the way we relate to ourselves, the way we can connect or not connect with others. So, and that part is more you can develop flexibility in that part of your nervous system.
Oh, excellent. So that's kind of like the little things we would focus on, is that's our flexibility, is when we start to have the awareness to say, oh, I'm really agitated right now. I think I need to take a moment before I engage or before I respond to this email or text or whatever's happening.
Yeah. And like a lot of times at first, for quite some time, you don't have yet the capacity built for that pause. You intellectually might know that you need to pause there, but because it's like, I kind of equate it to being like almost possessed, like it's like a possession that can take you over, especially if it's like a fight or flight response. And at first, it's a very automatic. So eventually, as you learn to track and develop that muscle for that, you can take that pause. Like your system is got more flexibility, you can intervene more, you can, but at first it might just be like a thought in your mind that would be important, which is often the case, like, because we can explode, you know, as humans, we can get very panicky or anxiety or angry or want to like just bolt, you know, out of either literally or figuratively, you know, out of a relationship or literally out the door. So at first it's just like, I always want to say that because it's like, we could talk all day long about all the things that we could do or should do, but like our system might not be there yet. So we want to give ourselves, that's that bit by bit process you were talking about.
That's a good reminder too, because I think sometimes when we hear something new, we want to do it. And then if we don't succeed at it, which we really won't, not at the beginning, it really takes a lot of time. But that's what we're here for, is like to provide a place where people can come and learn a little bit and maybe go away and practice and then maybe come back and let us know how it's going.
I call it, you know what I call it for my clients is information gathering. Instead, you know, because I always tell them, and we'll get to it too, like the trying is the part that really matters. But it's like your information gathering. So if you try to regulate yourself, say you try to take that pause and it doesn't work, you still got information about how your body works. And
absolutely, even if it's
that matters. That's a success for this type of work. That's what we're looking for.
Right. And it doesn't matter when you discover it. So that's what I say too, is even if it's next week, you realize, oh, last week I did this thing. Okay. And then it's that pause where it's like, okay, what would I want to do different? Or even just being with the system when it's activated. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Yeah, I do too, because I think that's what we're all doing, is kind of moving away from something that was difficult or a feeling that's difficult, and we move away. And so what we're talking about is, it's not like sitting in it and not doing anything about it. It's like being with it in a different way, but it'll start to make more sense. So do you want to share your screen? And I'll go off screen for a little while and then I'll come back. And just for everyone to notice, down in there's a Q&A there. You can start putting your questions in there. Taryn's going to talk with us about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll take Q&A. So I'll be back. So thank you, Taryn.
Thanks, Sam. Okay. It's working here. Let's see. All right. So to start, I do want to invite everybody just to do, you don't even have to know what I'm talking about yet, actually. But we're going to just do a little tracking just to start. So if you can, if you're willing, you also don't have to, just take a moment and just track into your nervous system, track into your body. That probably sounds very weird to a lot of people, and you don't need to know how to do it. Just, you can imagine it like turning your awareness from external to like a little bit more internal. If you want to close your eyes, you can, you don't have to. And just notice what your body is feeling like. Does it feel jittery? Does it feel bouncy? Does it feel numb, disconnected? Does it feel chill and kind of okay? Do different parts feel different? Do your legs feel different than your chest? Does your head or your face feel different than your legs? You know, just kind of checking in with yourself. That's just tracking and you don't really need to know much more yet. We'll get to what that all means. So if you can just take a brief moment, do a little check-in. And then we will move forward. I'm gonna approach this like just a presentation. So there's gonna be a lot of information in this. You don't need to get all of it. We can provide either the slides somehow or link to the slides, or if you need to take a screenshot with your phone or something, if something looks useful for you. Don't try to take it all in right now. I just want this information there for you for the process that this takes. And we're just going to focus on a couple of the points on each slide. Okay. So foundational skills for mental health. I call these foundational skills because learning your nervous system is actually the foundation of mental health. So we talk a lot about mental health, mental illness. We talk a lot about anxiety, depression, but at the core of all of that is our nervous system at work. So this is how to understand your nervous system, why it matters, and what to do. Of course, it's just a little bit of information, but it's to get you started. Take a look at how our nervous system, how we learn it through tracking. We can look at anxiety and depression through the lens of the nervous system. NS is nervous system. We'll do a little bit of immediate tools and ongoing tools for regulation. And we will take a look at the role resilience plays in all of this. So life affects our nervous system. I used to have it say trauma affects our nervous system, which it does, but really it's that life affects our nervous system, and it's not all trauma. Our nervous system is constantly responding to life around us and in us. So it's going to have responses and reactions all the time, whether it's a traumatic thing or it's PTSD showing up or it's just a stressful situation. Our nervous system is always at play. A regulated nervous system is a present nervous system. We call it in somatic language, we call it a relaxed state of readiness, meaning your body's chill, but you're present enough to respond with your full capacity. So like, rather than being sort of stuck in an emotional state, you're present, you can kind of like engage around you, you can socially engage, make eye contact, and then you're ready to respond with your full capacity. No one lives in this all the time. I really feel like that's important. No one achieves some state of pure regulation that they never come out of. That would not even be healthy or good. We need to have our nervous system working. But what we want is flexibility. We want to be able to move in and out of different nervous system states. So if you're in a relaxed state of readiness and all of a sudden a car blows out near you and there's a loud noise and you jump, you might feel like your body get very activated. If you have emotional flexibility, you might be able to then come back down, say everything chills back out. It's back to kind of like everything's okay around you, no big deal. Your body can find its safety again. Like that was a little scary and then it found safety again. If we don't have flexibility, we can get stuck in that. And even though everything was okay right after the car blew out, we stay in that heightened state all day. That is not flexibility. And that's where a lot of our mental health challenges can come, where we get kind of stuck in those states. So an overwhelmed nervous system is a dysregulated nervous system. So that's kind of like the car alarm blows out, right? We jet out. That's in that moment, it's a quick experience of overwhelm to the system. The system gets dysregulated. Again, we want to try to work on being able to come back down. But a lot of us exist a lot of the times with a dysregulated nervous system. Dysregulated, and for the sake of this presentation, we can kind of put it into the fight, flight, freeze. Some people say fawn categories, meaning survival mode, meaning what we call in somatic language, a limited state place to be. So meaning it's you're a limited choice state. Sorry, you're limited to the choice, the responses of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And that keeps you out of flexibility, right? So you're limited in a dysregulated state, you're limited to having those types of responses to situations. So even if everything is okay around you, if you're dysregulated, you might respond in this kind of way with a fight response, a flight where you want to leave, a freeze where you don't do anything, right? You're not present and able to respond with that relaxed state of readiness. So dysregulation can also bring up a lot of our coping mechanisms. So that's where a lot of our challenges can come to. Being dysregulated is not comfortable a lot of the times, and we look for like pain management around that. So we're trying to deal with our anxiety or deal with our depression, and we go to these different coping mechanisms that a lot of times are not so good for us. But we can read our nervous systems, we can learn to read our nervous systems, and tracking what we just started touching on is really like the key to that flexibility that we're looking for. Tracking is the way that we start to learn how our body communicates to us, and we start to have more and more control. And I mean that in a good way, like we're in the driver's seat more of our life. Dysregulation, a lot of times it comes with powerlessness. Like there's a sense of, if we get our systems dysregulated, usually there's some sense of threat. It doesn't have to just be physical danger. It can be all sorts of different types of threats. And when that activation comes, that dysregulation comes to your body, a lot of times it's because that threat, there's a sense of not being in control, a sense of powerlessness. So that is why I really, really stress in bold, the trying is the doing. And it really is when it comes to nervous system work, meaning just trying to track yourself, just trying to take that pause, like Samantha was saying, just trying to learn your system will signal, the trying itself signals to your system that someone is getting in that driver's seat. Someone's there to take care of things, right? And that's really important for a sense of inner safety. And really our nervous system, it's always looking for cues of danger or cues of safety. So if we have a dysregulated system, most likely that system's going to look for cues of danger. It's like, where's the danger? Where's the danger? We want to come in as the driver and give it cues of safety. And this is actually from a teacher of mine. He calls it the Don Kalshed, he calls it the self-care system rather than the self-defense system. And I like that because the nervous system is not actually trying to hurt us. It's trying to say no more pain. It's trying, like if trauma had a phrase, it would say never again. So our nervous system is trying to say never again will the thing that hurt me hurt me. And it does that in all sorts of ways. But weirdly, it's really trying to help us. So it's a part of us. So we want to take a look at anxiety and depression through the body. I look at, and somatically, we look at anxiety and depression as two sides of the same coin, the coin being overwhelm to the system. It's just different ways that our body responds to that overwhelm. Fight flight is a state of high activation. That might be where we feel anxiety, panic, rage, all that lovely stuff. We might also feel it when we're very excited, you know, like it's not always like necessarily a categorized negative experience, but it might be when we're really, really excited about something, we're very, very activated. And then a freeze is kind of when that activation, it gets so high that it tips the edge, you could say, and our body shuts down. So it's the highest state of activation, but it's a state of immobility. So we might feel a complete collapse where we're like numb and like can't really, like we have no energy, nothing in us, and just kind of out of it, zoned out. But we might also be a high activated freeze where we like feel buzzy inside and feel really like a ton of anxiety inside, but we're like frozen and stuck. So there's different ways it can show up. Working with anxiety. This is what Samantha was talking about, being with it instead of moving away from it. It's probably really, I don't know what the most important thing is, but it would be up there. If there was a hierarchy of important things, being able to go into it instead of moving away from it. It seems very simple. It's very hard to do, but when you do it, it's like remarkable the difference it makes, especially over time, especially when it becomes a part of a practice that you consistently stick with. When we jump away from it, in a way, it's almost like it validates it, like it allows it. You're basically telling your body, like, yeah, you're right, you should be freaking out, which a lot of times we shouldn't be freaking out. Even if it's valid, probably freaking out is not the thing that's going to help anyway. So going into it, being able to track into it, allows it to like chill out a little bit. It sort of, again, signals that someone's there, and it really can help. And then that builds your skills of understanding your nervous system. So the more you go into it, the more you learn also. The more you learn, the more you'll get to the outcome you're looking for with yourself. Again, these are a bunch of, I don't want to take too much time, but we can make sure you get this information. It's about using resources. We can go a little bit more into that if Samantha wants to afterwards, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on. And Sam, if you want to come back to any of this, we certainly can. Feeling low and depressive states. That's kind of like being in a freeze state, somatically, nervous system wise, we might say that. It's like that low, shut down kind of feeling. It's that lethargic, you can't really get out of bed. It's very, some people describe it as like a zone out, a checkout place. It's a very dissociated, out of body place. But because it has so much activation under the surface, it's something you want to work with very gently, bit by bit. You don't want to try to overwhelm yourself in the healing process ever. Because again, if you look at the previous slides, it's overwhelm, right? Nervous system dysregulation is overwhelm to the system. So we don't want to overwhelm the system in the healing process. So mobilizing yourself out of a depressive state, it is a process. And I mean, kind of literally sometimes baby step by baby step. Like sometimes I mean, literally taking yourself out of your bed, one foot on the ground, giving yourself a moment, another foot on the ground, giving yourself a moment, walking slowly, like slowly allowing yourself to mobilize bit by bit. And then really, I should have bolded to build scaffolding for your process. You know, if the building is being built, right, as they're building it, they have this structure around it so that it's supported as it's being built. We kind of want to do that for our nervous system, especially when we're moving out of a depressive state, because there's so much activation under the surface a lot of times. We want to make sure we have food. We want to make sure we have a support system if we can. We want to make sure we have comfort around us, the things that resource us, that bring our nervous system down. All of those things are scaffolding for a process that can take a little bit of time. Some immediate tools that you can use for if you find yourself in a freeze state, which does happen a lot of times in life. Maybe there's a conflict, or again, like even the car example is a good one for this. Like if it jets your system into an activated state and then you get stuck or frozen, some of these tools can be helpful. We call it orientation plus. So orientation plus means you orient yourself, which I'll tell you in a second, and then you add something else in that complements it, that helps anchor you further. So orientation plus a grounding breath, let's say. Orientation would be, there's different ways to do it. I'm going to just talk about visual orientation right now. Visual orientation, you might want to look around, you know, the space you're in, either a room or an outdoor area, wherever you are. Let your eyes go 360 degrees and let your eyes land somewhere and kind of describe it to yourself. So I'm looking at this very large vase of sticks in my office. Which, anyway, but there's a very large vase of sticks in my office, and they're brown, and one's like longer than the other, and whatever. So you start explaining it to yourself. I know it sounds really silly, but what it does is it brings your nervous system into the present moment. And when you're a little bit more oriented to the present moment, you can then bring in something like a grounding breath, a low, slow inhale and exhale. You can bring in little movement if you feel like you need to shake anything out. You can kind of like press your feet into the ground. You can use touch if you have something soft and you want to like wrap yourself in it. Anything like that. It's just, again, it's that like those quick little tools that can just bring your nervous system back just a little bit more. Ongoing tools for self-regulation. Again, the main one to focus on is to develop the ability to observe and track yourself. It's going to give you the most leverage in the long term with all of this. And then everything else is the kind of stuff that we all, to be honest, we all know and we hear and we see all over the place. But if you add in your awareness of your nervous system into things like exercise and daily movement, or into things like community, et cetera, it makes it more actionable and possible. Because in theory, a lot of times we all know all the things to do, but it's very difficult to actually do it because our nervous system isn't there yet. So when you combine your new awareness of tracking yourself, and understanding your nervous system, now all of a sudden these things become a part of your process and they're more doable. And finally, the importance of resilience. This work, nervous system work, is really a process of working with your natural resilience, your body's natural ability to bounce back. So when you're working with your system, you're learning your system, you're self-regulating, you're doing these different things, you're building like a capacity for life. And you're building the ability for your body to have that flexibility and move through the ups and downs of life in a more like present, regulated, healthy way. So, but we're made for that. We're made for it. So when we learn this and do this work, we're actually utilizing what we're already made for. And then I always like to say to remember the compassion and understanding. It's much easier to do usually for other people than for yourself. But these are hard things. Like if this was easy stuff, like everyone would do it all the time. We wouldn't like necessarily have the like big pharma industry for mental health stuff. You know what I mean? Like this is hard stuff. Like it is. And it gets easier and easier the more you do it. And eventually it becomes really, really natural and just kind of, it does it itself a lot more. So try to have some compassion and understanding for yourself, and try, if you can, at least have a part of you that can hold compassion for yourself as you move through this process. It's meant to be up and down. It's not meant to be some simple, easy process. It's meant to be like that. So if you can embrace it, usually it goes well. It goes a little better. Okay.
Thank you, Taryn. That was good. That was really, really helpful. We have a couple of questions that came in. We're gonna go over just a few minutes, if that's all right.
I lost my time. I couldn't, and my clock went away when my screen shared, so I couldn't keep track. I'm sorry.
No, we're good. We're totally good. The two things I wrote down is that we can notice where there is not flexibility, because you were talking about finding the flexibility, and then also noticing, are there situations where we don't have the flexibility?
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Like every time I talk to that person, this is what happens.
Yeah.
So then we're noticing, I don't have as much range. I can't just be myself. I can't feel at ease. So I'm lacking flexibility. So I think that noticing piece is, so it can go either way. We can notice when we have
totally. And it's all information. And then just to that too, that eventually the more you learn your system, the more you learn when like, maybe that's not a good person. You know what I mean? Like maybe you're not safe around that person and it's an accurate read, you know? So like, how do you work with it then? That's a different process, you know?
Yeah.
So just to say.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So we'll do a couple questions, and we're just going to go over a few minutes. So those of you can hang on. We're so glad you're here. So somebody asked, what if my triggers and responses hurt someone I love as I'm trying to regulate? I am new at this, so it may get easier.
Yeah. I work with that a lot. I mean, I was there at one point in my life too, but I work with that a lot. I work actually with a lot of females and who have been abused. And so the type of PTSD that can come from that has like these massive fight responses a lot of times. And they're very valid, but often misplaced. Like if it's in a new relationship and that relationship is a healthy one.
Right.
So it's something that you'd want to talk to your partner about and work with. And I always try to say, like, let yourself course correct. So at first it's going to be super hard. I'm just going to use that explosive response as, I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I work with that a lot. These like huge fight responses and very explosive. At first, it's really hard. It's like the pause. It's really hard to intervene. So you've got to give yourself, when you catch it, go back and say, can I redo that? That was this thing that happened, you know, like you have to like kind of really work that process, but give yourself the space, because if you say, we've all been there, I'm never going to do that again. You know, you try to make these promises, I'm never going to do that again. You probably are. And it's probably not your fault. And you're working with it. And as long as you're working with it, it absolutely will change. And I'm like living proof of that. Like, it really will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the two big things I hear in there for this person and for all of us is compassion and communication. So the compassion for ourselves first, like, because when we start to be hard on ourselves, we're taking ourselves in a different direction there. So like the compassion for ourselves, and then communicating with the people that are safe around us. Hey, I'm working on this and maybe you can help me, but here's what I'm doing to change this response, whatever it is. I don't know what their response was, but I think we've all been there where we've said something in the heat of the moment. And then, I mean, that's what the heat of the moment is.
Yeah.
Some responding, you know, we've been using that language
that's
forever.
The heat. That is the actual heat. Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So somebody asked if you could just explain the fawn response and maybe give an example of fawn.
Yeah, I include that because honestly, if some people get upset if it's not in there. Fawning is like people pleasing. It's often associated as a more, not to gender things, but it's often associated a little bit with female experiences. And that's why some people feel very strong about including it. I see it as a part of a freeze. So I don't always organically include it in my stuff, because in my head, it's a freeze. It's a part of a freeze response where you're not able to fully like respond the way you would, because you're trying to keep things safe. So fawning is like trying to maintain harmony, even if it's like against your integrity or it doesn't feel right, you know, to keep everything okay, you know, that kind of thing. And yeah, a lot of times that has fallen into the hands of females to kind of maintain that, and it becomes a trauma response in and of itself. And but so it can happen for anyone, so I don't mean to actually gender that.
No, yeah, I agree. I was just going to underline that. I think it can, because it's another choice that we have among the limited choice of fight, flight, or fawn. So in that moment, there's sometimes in some moments we might freeze, but in other moments we might go into, if somebody's being aggressive, we might go into people pleasing. So that they'll stop the aggression versus saying, I don't like the aggression, but so the fawn is another response. Yeah.
And but that also highlights the fact that like sometimes these responses, like they worked at some point. Like that's very important to say, is that most of our trauma responses are these types of things, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. They were adaptive at one point. They did help us, but now they might not anymore, you know?
Right. It's so perfect because it takes us back to noticing and tracking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when we start to notice, oh, whenever I'm engaged with this one person, I say yes when I mean no.
Mhm.
I try to make them feel better.
Mhm.
That's where awareness can come in and we can say, oh, okay, I do not have flexibility in this situation. I am fawning, or it's just really noticing
Mhm.
where we're limited.
Yeah, and there's all different reasons why that may be, and that's why differentiating through tracking over time is so powerful, because sometimes that might mean because you have this imposter syndrome and you don't feel like you belong there, even though you absolutely do, or
Right.
sometimes it might be because you're really unsafe and that person is very aggressive and you're actually, it's working to calm them down, and that's an adaptive response. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Absolutely.
it's nuanced, and we're trying to build the foundation for understanding that.
Beautiful. Okay, perfect. So just keep an eye on time, but I just want to mention this one last question because I think it's a good one. I can't afford therapy, but I know I get too upset in certain situations. Are there things that I can do to help myself? Which is a little bit about what we've been talking about the tracking, right? Like really being able to notice when something's happening in our system.
Mhm.
Because that's really what good, it's one of the things good there. I don't mean to, like filter therapy down to one sentence, but that's one of the things that it does. It helps us build the awareness to say, there's something happening for me here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the capacity to be okay with that, to be able to like work with it, but therapy is cool, and like it's how I partially make my living, but so I'm all for it. I don't believe it's the only thing that helps. I don't mean like even just there's other stuff you can do in addition. Like I think there's a lot you can do that is not therapy,
Mhm,
especially when you look at it from a nervous system perspective.
mhm.
If you find, we call them resources, it's things that we, meaning somatic folks, like things that bring our nervous system back down. So if we're in dysregulation, the things that help regulate us, that settle
Mhm.
us a little bit, that bring us a little bit back to ourselves, and those coping mechanisms or those responses that aren't so helpful. So that can be anything from like a smell, like an oil or something, to a blanket, to something visual that you look at, to a sound. It could be all sorts of stuff. So building an understanding through tracking of what resources you, what helps,
What works for you,
what
right?
works for
Yeah.
you, because everyone's different and every situation is different. It's often like, when this type of activating thing is happening, this helps, or when this thing is happening, this helps. Like it's very nuanced and tailored and individual. Um,
Right.
and then things like singing is incredibly helpful for your nervous system. When
Oh,
you're
wow.
singing, yeah, when you're singing, your
I
system
love
is in
that.
full presence and full regulation. And it's so, so, so powerful and so healing for your body.
That's
So
beautiful.
anything like that, singing to yourself, for yourself in your room, humming does the same thing. If you're really frozen and not feeling good, you can start doing like a low resonant kind of hum, and that often like kicks on the part of your nervous system that'll bring you back online a little bit. So if you start learning how to work with your body, you're already ahead of what a lot of therapy would do, to be totally honest.
Yeah, and just a few moments before when we started this conversation, I smiled because I like when I find ways to say that a lot of the power lies within us, right? Because again, no shade on therapy. I'm a therapist myself as well, but it's that the wisdom is here. It literally is here in our bodies.
Mhm.
And this was such a good discussion. I feel like this is such a good starter. I'd love to hear feedback from those who've joined us and watched this. Taryn, would love to have you back to continue the conversation at some point, because I feel like this is really the stuff that I think helps us. It helps all of us to become kinder to ourselves, to other people, to everything around us. There's nothing like squishy about that. It just makes us kinder, more aware, and more able to like be with ourselves in a way where we feel comfortable. I mean,
Yeah, it makes life better. It really does, actually.
Yeah.
It makes life a lot better. And just takes a
Mhm.
minute to get off the hamster wheel we're used to, but it does work. And, I'll also just add, not to shade on therapy either, but a lot of times this is actually the missing component of therapy. So a lot of times people can spend 30 years and I've seen this in talk therapy, but because the body isn't in the mix this way, they can't get where they want to go. So please don't underestimate the power of this. This can get you very, very far.
Great. Thank you. What a perfect place to stop for now. And thank you, Taryn. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We love having you here. And yeah, and we invite all of you back and love to hear from you. And look forward to seeing you next time. Please follow us on Instagram and give us any feedback. Take good care. Bye, everyone.